And we're back with Tim, Angelo, Basil, and Lauren. Angelo, I want to get back to a point you made, which is that essentially gas signs are serving as an in-kind contribution for the Democratic Party right now. And you had Trump and his rapid response team make a bit of a snafu this week when the account decided to share a video segment from NBC Philadelphia. This is according to reporting from the Daily Beast that discussed how one former Carco K-Shop gas station, now wrapped in Freedom Fuel signage, posted a price of $3.47 per gallon. However, Google Street View images of the gas station showed that the promotion was not quite as monumental as the White House portrayed. In April of 2025, 3 months into Trump's second term, the gas station displayed a price of only $3.05 per gallon. Those images appeared to serve as a stark reminder that the price decrease touted by the White House was still effectively an increase over the prices seen before the war. It seemed like this White House was banking on the fact that voters would abide by their talking points, that going into this war was the best case scenario for the American people because for national security reasons, at least this is what they claimed. But it seems like now that voters, including Trump supporters, are paying these astronomical gas prices that have remained pretty high, despite some of these ups and downs and games that the president has been playing with the stock market and various MOUs and announcements being signed and then suddenly collapsing, that they are now seeing through the game that the White House is playing. Is there a world in which you feel like the administration can actually turn things around, or is this more than a rhetorical issue at this point?
So they probably can't because they're running out of tricks. And we don't want to get into the logistics here of like the strategic oil petroleum reserve, but it's not barrels of oil. It's just a giant salt mine. You can only take so much out of it before the thing collapses. And it's at its lowest level since 1983. There's not many more millions of barrels they can release before the strategic reserve collapses. That's just a geological fact. So one, their magic bag of tricks is gone. So even if they were committed to getting the prices down, their most immediate mechanism for doing that has a very, very short runway in front of them. So put that to the side, and let's put that sort of out of the picture because it's not entirely necessary here. It gets to the Freedom Fuel piece because then they sort of do this fake performative theater, hoping that the rest of the right-wing media echo chamber will latch onto that, and that will then stick in their people's heads. And they have good reason to believe that will work because if you go back and look at what right-wing media was saying, Fox News, all the parts of the ecosystem that was supporting Trump, they were owning the fact that gas would go up. They was like, yeah, gas might go up a little bit, at the beginning of the Iran war. Yeah, sure. But then it's going to go back even lower. It's going to be the lowest it's ever been. So you're going to end up saving money over time. They were telling that to their audiences every month that it's about to drop for 2 weeks. Now we're at the edge of that. They can't continue to give people that long con. So one, they can't practically, there's no policy way for them to do it. And then the alternative is to create this sort of fantasy that their people can buy into that will at least serve as a salve over the immediate wound. That's what they've been relying on for the past few months, is the prospect that it's going to go down enough that people will think they're going to somehow cash out in the end or make out better. They're at the edge. They can't. So even if they were committed to doing it, there's no way. They can't lie about it. They can't create an alternative reality, and they can't do it from a policy perspective because of the status of what the reserve is. And obviously, they're not going to end the Iran war. I mean, we know that. So that's where the current landscape is. So that I think reinforces what we were talking about earlier, is that it's do or die for them from their perspective, that it's all in on the types of election interference and malfeasance because they're not playing by the normal political rules. And we shouldn't lose sight of that fact either.
Yeah, and just to remind our viewers, this soundbite is now over a month old. Here is what the president actually thinks about the finances of Americans. Let's listen to it quickly.
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that motivates.
Basil, is there a world in which You think Trump would ever admit that getting into the Iran war was a horrible decision?
Is there a world where, I mean, Earth 2017, I don't know, but no, I don't think that there's a world where he would do that. And, you know, to pull on Angelo's point a bit, because it's an important one, that they are so invested in the performative aspects of what's happening right now.
Right.
And there are voters that will continue to support him and pay those high prices because they think ultimately that's the sacrifice they need to undertake to be able to support him. I call it sort of political tithing, right? That's what they have to pay to make sure that he's whole as president. But that impact seems to be affecting a smaller and smaller group of people. In other words, that there are more and more Americans that are saying, there's no benefit to me to continue to do this, to continue to support. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to vote for Democrats right away, that they still have to, a lot of voters still have to be convinced to do that. But I do feel that there is an opening because Trump can't, you know, he's going to continue to do this for as long as he's president. It's going to impact fewer and fewer people in a positive way. And even those that it does impact negatively, there are going to be fewer and fewer people that will stay behind him. But he'll never admit to anything because, you know, to your point earlier about the bill, if it's not coming from him, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. If he doesn't author it, if he doesn't own it, he doesn't care anything about it, and therefore, why invest in it?
And I want to quickly do a hard pivot to a story that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about yet, which is Air Force One, the gift that was presented to the president by Qatar, which I feel like is pretty emblematic of so many things that we have seen with this administration. A very dubious decision and very expedited, done in a very expedited way that obviously comes up short, the way so many other of his vanity projects and policies have ended. Tim, why do you think that the president decided not to fly back on the new Air Force One? Do you buy that the White House's pushback, that it was because they wanted soldiers in Europe to be able to view this gift from Qatar? Or do you believe the New York Times reporting that the new Air Force One lacks the same defensive countermeasures that were security features of the old model, including its advanced anti-missile capabilities? This is according to multiple officials who have been briefed on how the jet was retrofitted, and that Mr. Trump had pushed for the new plane to be put into use as quickly as possible and complained that the old presidential aircraft was not impressive enough to take on international trips.
Yeah, there's a lot here, Jackie, because it does kind of wrap up a lot of the themes of Trump. He's obviously lying. I mean, like that. I mean, it's an insulting lie, frankly, because he was bragging about how much he wanted to, how he liked flying on that jet because it was more luxurious or whatever. Like the idea that he would not want to ride it back because he wanted to show it off to, like, it just doesn't even make any sense. Obviously, I trust the experts, the people who are reporting on this, that it just was not safe, and they didn't deem it safe to fly out of Ankara, in part because it's so close to Iran, because he started a stupid war in Iran. So, I mean, this does tie exactly to that. And the other thing about this plane, you know, sometimes I like to put my former Republican hat on and think about like how Fox would be covering this if this was a Democratic president, or how Republican politicians would talk about this. And I also just think it's extremely humiliating for Donald Trump. And we had to take a hand-me-down plane from Qatar, from the Sharia law dictators in Qatar. That's what we're doing. Like that's where America is right now, and it's a pretty good encapsulation of American decline. And I think that sometimes maybe that is a more effective kind of message than talking about Trump, because everything else, you know, all the details of his corruption get kind of complicated. But like the fact that we, the taxpayers, had to pay $500 billion to fund his hand-me-down plane is pretty embarrassing and humiliating, I think, for the country.
When we return, we're going to keep this conversation going. There are growing fears amongst Republicans.